Discussions about the worst team in the first team phase of Teapot are as old as that first team phase itself. But lately, I've seen the community start to reach a solid consensus that Team8s is the worst team. Great BFDI video essayists before me have delved into Team8s at great length. Worst Trends and Cardi-Sun both mentioned in their own videos that Team8s is the worst. Actually, what inspired me to make this video came before Cardi-Sun's Team8s video, which I highly recommend by the way. In teasing this video, he mentioned that his next video would be on the worst Teapot team, and over 3/4 of the comments expected it to be Team8s. But not Jordan Animates, Future Unknown Zero, and Alex27170SC. Those guys know what's up. I got to thinking, geez, all Cardi-Sun did was mention the existence of the worst Teapot team, and almost everyone's minds went to Team8s. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell from the thumbnail, I'm here to make the case that the worst team in the first Teapot team phase is just not. And this is not the case of consensus or letting other OSC fans influence me. I came late to the party to Teapot. The BFDI revival is actually what got me out of a 2.5-year break from BFDI. So I binged Teapot 1 through 8 back to back in fall 2023. I got to see all the teams and their dynamics in an incredibly short period of time. Not to mention, if you know me and my channel, I do a lot of what ifs, which requires reading and rereading Teapot transcripts far more frequently than the average human being. So, in my initial watch and in subsequent reviews, I still find that Just Not is the worst. At least by my definition. More on that later. First, let's do away with the competition for the honor of worst Teapot team. Are You Okay is composed of fan favorites that bounce off each other in funny ways. Death Pact Again is clearly the team that the writers had the most fun exploring, as there were always really great dynamics between its members. And though I used to think negatively of the strongest team on Earth for having such mediocre characters, I didn't realize how much Basketball carried, joined by Robot Flower and the pleasantly surprising duo of Snowball and Grassy. So that does leave a bottom rung of teams. If Team8s is the choice of 70% of BFDI fans when asked about the worst Teapot team, and Just Not is the choice of 20%, then that last 10% usually goes to the S, but I don't think that's fair. Winter and Clock provide a lot in the way of continuing drama and arcs on the team, and with Yellowface and Bottle, you get two big personalities that really do go a long way in making the team more entertaining. I personally like Rocky a lot as a meme character, but I could see people being unimpressed with him, plus Ice Cube and Cloudy, the three of them being kind of unexplored on the team, though in all fairness, Cloudy doesn't last long enough to make much of a difference. Still, that's at least 4 interesting characters out of 7, or at least 4 characters the writers tried to make interesting. Whether or not you found them interesting is subjective. I can't in good conscience say the same about Just Not. Again, this is coming from someone who went into Teapot completely blind and watched the first 8 episodes back to back. I came out of that ordeal with a very low opinion of Just Not. And though endlessly rereading the Teapot scripts has somewhat boosted them in my eyes, I still think they're the worst Teapot team. Yes, worse than Team8s. The writers clearly had trouble working with this team, which I honestly can't blame them for given the makeup of it. Coming off of BFB, Naily just talked about nailing it, and Bommy just blew up. Cake was a loser worshiper, Nickel sort of just stood there, Price Tag was brand new and had very little in the way of a personality in Teapot 1. On paper, Book could have become a strong personality to unite the team. She had just been told off by her old teammates, with Gady recommending she find some new friends. But instead, she, like Nickel, just sort of ends up standing around during the first Teapot team phase. Teapot 10 retroactively passes this off as purposeful, Book somewhat awkwardly trying to make herself smaller after a season of being the biggest personality on her team. And that works, but it has the consequence of making Just Not a very small team with very small personalities. So that's where Pillow steps in. Taking advantage of the vacuum, she becomes the biggest personality on the team, and in many episodes, Just Not's background storyline basically boils down to Pillow's way or the highway. Pillow is her team's standout member in Teapot 2, Teapot 5, and Teapot 9, and she additionally comes up with the team strategies in Teapot 8 and Teapot 10. No one else on Just Not comes close to that level of focus in the early team phase, other than maybe Price Tag, who I'll talk more about in a minute. Having a strong central character on the team isn't the worst thing in the world, but Pillow is by definition pretty polarizing. She loves wanton violence, which often results in her murdering others, including her own teammates. That's kind of funny in Teapot 2, but by Teapot 9, it's gotten old. Having a team in which Pillow is the only member who does anything, and even then she's a one-trick pony, it's a recipe for disaster. The team is reduced to a background role in most episodes. Teapot 1, the team gets stuck in an elevator. Teapot 2, Bomby stacks the blocks, Pillow murders Price Tag, and everyone else stands around. Teapot 3, the team decides to sell garbage at the amusement park. Bookmark this episode. Teapot 4, the team is stranded in the desert where they just kind of wander around. Teapot 5, the team breaks gravity, fights Fries and Puffball, and then Pillow murders her teammates again. Teapot 6, the team goes to slay a dragon in a subplot that many find funny, and in all fairness, it's more than what they usually get, but personally I couldn't get into the D&D stuff. I don't know, maybe it's because I find the characters so lame, but LARPing and playing chess doesn't do anything to boost them in my opinion. Teapot 7, Pillow murders people again while the rest of the team barters. Bookmark this episode as well. Teapot 8, the team hangs out. Get it? Get it? Teapot 9, Pillow murders her teammates again, and the rest of the team, gets murdered by Pillow. Teapot 10, Bomby and Price Tag help Pillow try out some strategies that don't involve murdering people. Now about those bookmarks. Teapot 3 and Teapot 7 are the only episodes in which Just Not delegates its strategy to Price Tag. Unless you're a fan of the team's journey in Teapot 6, which again I mentioned I'm already not, I actually think Teapot 7 is the team's best episode. The proposed bartering strategy is a fun one, and it's enjoyable to watch everything work out perfectly, but then watch everything blow up in their faces at the end. Because come on, this is still Just Not we're talking about. The more I've rewatched and reread Teapot, I've come to the conclusion that Price Tag is the breakout character. In fact, this script started out as that Price Tag video I mentioned last time, but I found I had enough to say about Just Not to expand the topic into its own video. I'll still make that Price Tag one though. If a blank slate character ends up being the standout role of 6 peers, you know that those 6 peers are either criminally underdeveloped or just sort of boring. In addition to Teapot 7, I did like the team in Teapot 9. Everybody else is living in Night of the Living Dead, but Just Not is stuck in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's pretty funny, and it's more than satisfying when Bomby destroys a baffled Pillow on his own terms. It's nice to have Pillow's incessant violence fill some sort of purpose for once. To a certain extent, I also enjoy Teapot 10, and I think it's an appropriate send-off for Just Not. You have Pillow finally showing some humility, Book's baggage finally gets explored, and though I do think it's a little forcefully corny, I have come to really appreciate Price Tag's talk with Book and the establishment of that friendship. Too bad they also used this opportunity to screw over Bomby. But yeah, that's Just Not. A disappointing run that had a few graceful moments and sort of stuck the landing. It stinks because it really didn't have to be this way. Cake could have gotten closer to Clock. It would have been interesting to see their class of philosophies regarding celebrity worship. Clock choosing to cling to winner while Cake tries to get out of loser's shadow. At least according to his elimination scene, because it's never brought up again. Maybe Bomby and Nickel could have had some resentment toward Coiny for not inviting them to his Wobunch team. Heck, Naily and Bomby could have tried trolling Donut and Barfbag, as Naily clearly has some disrespect towards her 2 former teammates in Teapot 1 that goes completely unacknowledged and unexplored for the rest of her time in the game. And maybe Book could have talked to Pin more like she did in BFB 14. Or maybe she could have checked in with Gady, desperately trying to prove to her that she is making new friends, make it a pride thing. Huh? Just Not and Teammates really could have used each other's help. It's become very socially acceptable to say that Team8s is the worst team in the first Teapot phase, with Worst Trends and Cardi's son in particular laying out really strong arguments to why in their own videos. I respect these arguments, and believe me, it's a race to the bottom, as Team8s takes some great characters and some mid characters, and basically cryogenically freezes all of them for 10 episodes while other teams get better exploration and development. But Just Not is like an all-star lineup of characters I couldn't care less about. So I guess the opposite of an all-star lineup, a no-star lineup. No-star might have actually been a funnier name for the team than Just Not. But I digress. Book was at the pit of her popularity after a multiple-year tantrum in BFB. Bomby barely even spoke, and these are the stronger characters on the team. I've never been one for Nickel. I know he's going through a bit of a popularity increase right now, and good for him, but his BFDIA personality was negated, so he was basically just there. Speaking of being just there, Cake was never explored in any meaningful way. You can add Naily to that list too, since she basically incorporated nothing throughout her time in BFB or Teapot other than nail puns and cat smiles. Seriously, it makes me sad how Fiery Jr. was eliminated and Spongy was tarnished, but Naily remained on Team Ice Cube. I never liked Pillow all that much, but although she quickly started getting on my nerves, I can see why people connected to her, as she truly was the big personality on a team with almost none. Throw in Price Tag, who the writers really try with, especially in Teapot 7 and Teapot 10, and you've got the worst team in early Teapot. At least, in my opinion. Because remember, I said that Just Not is the worst, but it depends on what metric you use to decide the worst. Team8s has great characters with virtually nothing to do. Just Not has mediocre characters, who sometimes have stuff to do, and that stuff is sometimes interesting. Here's a sports analogy for Super Bowl Sunday. Team8s is like getting some of the best trained athletes together, along with some promising new recruits, and then forcing them to just sit on the sidelines for the entire Super Bowl. The S is like throwing one or two really good players with good strategies onto a mediocre football team. And then Just Not is like forcing a middle school football team to play in the Super Bowl. By my own perspective then, I think Just Not is the worst early Teapot team, even though I could really clearly see the argument for Team8s, just because how much talent it wastes. I think the Teapot crew knew how weak Just Not was as a team, too. It's not a coincidence that Just Not was the only original Teapot team to go up for elimination 4 times before the team swap. I think the writers knew that these were the most expandable characters. Watching through Just Not's eliminations, I was relieved when Naily was eliminated, and I couldn't care less about Cake's elimination. Nickel and Bommy were done dirty. Nickel was sabotaged by Pillow, and Bommy was sabotaged by the writers, but no harm, no foul. By the time former Just Not or Pillow was finally eliminated in Teapot 17, I breathed a sigh of relief, because man was I sick of her by then. And though Book and Price Tag became the best members of the team at the end, and definitely deserved to be the last Just Notters standing, I was still hoping one of them would be eliminated in Teapot 19 over Snowball or Grassy. That's something I can't say for Team8s. I genuinely hoped Barf Bag, and especially Pin and Donut, would make it far in the second stage of the game. But Just Not's characters were so weak that even with Just Not itself ceasing to exist, I still find myself rooting against its members. Or at least hoping virtually every other character survives over them. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Again, if you haven't already, I highly recommend giving Cardi Sun's video on Team8s a watch, because it does make a very good case on how that team could be considered the worst. And keep in mind, if you like Just Not, or any of its members, or all of its members, that's obviously totally cool. This is just one man's opinion, not a fact. Actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on why you personally like this team, especially if it has anything to do with this little gremlin.